come and join me and see what we're creating this week. Good afternoon and welcome back to another video. Today I've got a new container. This time I've been gifted it by a local flower club. So it's a creamy white. It's definitely not a pure white. It's an off-white in its colour. It's round and quite bulbous, and I'm going to fit some floral foam into the top. And what you can see I've done is I've just cut the foam to fit. I've chamfered it off a little bit at the base there so it fits in the hole, but still leaves me a wider section at the top to arrange into. I've also got enough room on the back there or the front to add some water to the floral design so that the foam isn't going to dry out. So welcome back, my name is Sharon. It's lovely to see you all coming back time after time to watch a tutorial. I'm thoroughly enjoying everything that we're doing. And today I may be a little bit modern, not as traditional as we've been in the past. And I've got some interesting flowers and foliages for us to look at. Now I'm going to start with the Pandanus leaf. It's very similar to the New Zealand flax, but it has, if I turn it on its side, you might be able to see it has this sort of groove running up through the centre. It's quite a pliable leaf, very flexible. And if you look at designs with manipulated foliage, then you quite often find that the Pandanus leaf has been used. And you can also split it down to get smaller pieces out of that one leaf, which we'll look at a little bit later on. And for this design, I'm going to go low and grouped and clustered with an asymmetrical style. So it's going to be longer on one side. Now the Pandanus leaf is naturally bending to what is my right. So that's going to sit quite well in that position there. So it's naturally swooping out to my right hand side. And sometimes you have to look at the foliage or the flowers even, and see which way it naturally bends to decide which is the best position to put it into your arrangement. Now the leaf is very broad, and what I'm going to do here at the base is just trim it into a point so that when I insert it into the foam, it doesn't take up so much room and doesn't take a big chunk of my foam out. And I'm really down quite low on the floral foam, sitting on top of the edge of that container to give me some real strong visual placement there towards the right hand side. And what I'm going to do next is balance off the weight of this side of the arrangement with a big leaf here at the back. And I've chosen the Swiss cheese plant or the Monstera. So nice big leaves, and visually they're going to balance this side off in an asymmetric style. So different to what we've done before. And when I turn it round in just a second, hopefully you'll be able to see that this is shorter and this is longer, so that makes the design asymmetrical. And I don't want to hide the container underneath, but I also don't want it to be too dominant, because then it's going to overshadow the flowers that I've got for the design. So this is a front-facing design, so this back section here isn't going to be as visible as the flower material in the front. So I'm just going to use some Conifer, and this is just an ordinary garden Conifer, towards the back. That's going to help cover my floral foam and create that depth in the arrangement. It's also a really good contrast against the flat, shiny leaf of the Swiss cheese plant. And I have already cut these to size just before we started filming to make the back section quicker to complete. But you'll see that I've got a nice bit of interesting texture. I haven't made the design too flat at the back, so I've still got depth running from the front to the back. I've got my asymmetrical widths and I've got my height already started. So for this design, instead of the height being double the size of my container, I've taken the proportions sideways. So I'm almost laying the design on its side on top of that container. Now my flower choice this week is something that I don't think we've worked with before. I might have used them very early on in the first Back to Basics series. If you haven't seen these before, these are Liatris. Gorgeous purple colour on the end. So great linear material, fantastic for parallel arrangements or for when you're learning the basic floral designs. And again, if we take a look at this, it is bending slightly downwards. So I'm going to make use of that in the design. If I position it upwards, let's just move slightly to this side and you can see better. If I position it this way, make sure I travel upwards and away from the floral design. What I'm going to do is position it this way, so my eye travels downwards and picks up a leaf, which will bring my eye back towards the centre. So it's important to take a minute to look at the way your flower material is bending, which way it's shaped, which way it's naturally grown, so that you can use it to its best advantage within an arrangement. Now you don't always use them bending downwards. In a different style of arrangement, we might position them in a different way. Those two happen to be curving down, whereas my final piece, my third piece, is quite straight. So that's, for me, works better towards the centre. So I'm going to cut this shorter. Now the Liatris will grow quite easily here in the UK, and I know if you're not in the UK, it must be a bit frustrating every time I mention flowers that grow in the UK, but of course I'm from the UK, so I am familiar with the plant material that you can grow quite easily in the garden. So what those materials are doing is they're a line material, so they make your eye travel towards the centre, which is the focal point. And my focal point is going to be this amazing rose. This one is called Buttercup. I think we've used it once before in quite a traditional design for a top table where I didn't use floral foam. And I'll link that in the cards here if you want to go back and to see that design. But it's a great link with my container. Now these are going to come towards the focal point and they're really going to emphasize this middle section of my design. But before I put those in, I'm going to introduce just a small bit of the lime green conifer. This is going to give me a brilliant contrast. It's a much fussier texture, and alongside the flat leaves of the Monstera and the Pandanus leaf that comes over here to the one side, this is going to give me a really good contrast. And contrast in textures, contrast in shapes is really important within the floral design. And they are, of course, part of our principles and elements of design. So I've just cut myself some short, small pieces, and I'm going to bring them up a little bit towards the centre so that we have that colour link. And you'll notice that this is a design where I'm blocking the materials together. I'm not evenly spreading them out, which is a more traditional way of arranging flowers. I'm blocking them together so that we get a real statement from those individual pieces. And the contrast between this fussy lime green texture works brilliantly against the texture of the dark green, flat, very glossy leaf of the Swiss cheese plant. Good colour combination. Right, I'm just going to add a few more pieces to the top so that I'm covering the foam there at the top. I don't want to make this design too tall, but we really need to think about covering the foam there at the top. And just a few simple pieces. And we're nearly done. I think that's possibly going to be too long to be tucked in under there. So when you're working on a design, you need to think really before you start. Are you designing something that's quite modern, has a lot of visual impact, has clashing colour combinations, has real contrast in between the plant material? Or are you arranging something that's more traditional? Because the choice of material is really affected depending on the style of design that you want to create and the shape you want to achieve. What do we think? So again, fabulous on a reception desk or a modern hairdressing salon. This would work really well in any modern interior or any minimalist interior. So now we're going in with the rose. I'm cutting them quite short because they're coming to my focal point here at the front. And they're going to go in a cluster. And at the moment, I've just got the three roses there. And that's working as my focal point. We have this dramatic asymmetrical shape longer on one side than the other. And then this bold, creamy colour gives me the focal point there in the centre and a good link to my base. And I've got 2 more of the roses. So this really pretty, so beautiful garden style rose, which is going to give me that impact there at the top. Also repeating the shape of my container. So I have a round container on the bottom, and then I have round flower shapes in the top. So that bold yellow colouring in the centre also picks up on the colour of my container. And it also picks up on the creamy green colouring that's running down the centre there of my leaves. So quite a striking design, maybe a style that you don't particularly like. But what I'm now going to do is to use the Pandanus leaf to break it down into a few different pieces. And it's quite easy to do. You just need to tear it down the midrib to start with. And then you can do the same with the largest piece. So tear it down the centre. So you have now these much more pliable and flexible pieces of greenery. And what I'm going to do with these is to bring them onto the opposite side. So on the shorter side, I'm going to place them in at the front of the design, and then I'm going to loop them over, almost making them squared off in their appearance, so that we get this lovely angular piece of foliage. And then I'm going to cut the end so that I have a straight cut to go back into the floral foam. And we get that very angular position. I'm balancing off the length of this side of the arrangement with this concentration of foliage here onto the left-hand side. Now, a Pandanus leaf here in the UK would probably have to be ordered through a reputable florist shop. And I'm sure they'd be quite happy to order them in for you. But if you do have plants in the garden, you might be able to get hold of the New Zealand flax, the phormium leaf, and you'll be able to do the same thing with that tall, thin, linear leaf. And I think that's worked really well. So I've got 2 leaves coming through from the longer side, and I'm going to balance that off with the 2 very rigid shapes of the contrasting shape of the Pandanus leaf on this side. So we've got something that's quite vibrant, a little bit different to what we normally do. Now I'm going to add another 1 flower type in, and this is also a linear flower. So this is a tall flower, straight, great example of a line. This is the Tuberose, and it's a highly fragrant flower. A real treat for me to be able to use these. And it has a slight cream colour to it, and also a lilac-y purple shade. So it's going to act as a sort of connection between the purple here and the cream flower in the centre. And I'm almost going to repeat the same pattern and the same shape as I've done with the linear Liatris here on the end. We're going to bring them in so that we're extending that real dynamic longer side of the floral design. And this one is quite tall, but I'm only going to use the top section, and this one's going to come more towards the front. I just felt that the purple on its own wasn't quite a good enough link with the creamy coloured rose, and then with a shorter bit I can bring this more towards the focal point because it's a bigger, wider flower, and that's going to work really well in there. So this final shorter piece of the Tuberose is going to snugly fit in that gap there. Now is far more cohesive with the tall linear placements of the Liatris that I placed in the very beginning. Goes to show that my plan always doesn't go to plan, and that I need to adapt and alter the shape or the style as the arrangement comes together. But I think that's lovely. I'm really pleased with how that's turned out, and I love my new container. So what do we think? Simple, plain, simple yet effective. So that's quite a simple design to create, but has a real statement to it when it's finished. Very dramatic. I hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, then please subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial. Write a comment in the box below or ask a question. It's lovely to hear from everybody, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. So bye for now.